as one of the citizens trying to honor you with our works. Thank you this morning for our chance to go deeper into your word. Thank you for Josh and his passion for service and his love for family and you. Bless us as participants that we can put our focus and our attention on what you are revealing to us. Thank you for Jesus Christ, and it's in his name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, good morning. Thank you all. And come on in, grab a seat. We'll get going here. So as we're shuffling in, I had the pleasure to work yesterday, which is a blessing that I don't get to experience very often, thankfully. But we had a meeting, and it was one of those year-end recaps and New Year kickoff type things. And so as we're getting ready to get going, our owner got up and gave a kind of an opening remarks, and then we all got to speak later. But he asked a pretty basic question and made us all kind of think throughout the presentation and through the meeting. But I want to relay that question. And his question was simply why. You know, in this case, it was why do people do business with us, and why do our employees want to work with us? And so I thought about that during the meeting yesterday, and then on my drive home yesterday afternoon, I was thinking about this class and thinking about why. Why are we here? And you don't need to answer that, but just think about that as we go through today. Why are we here? Why are we here at the North Tampa Church of Christ? And then the second question, to kind of follow up with that, why should other people come here? And so as we go into our study, just let's think about that and, you know, ponder on that this week and as we move forward. And, you know, hopefully we can have some good answers to that, and hopefully we'll be able to share that with others. I was talking with another brother yesterday, or excuse me, after services last week, and he advised me to read James 1, verse 19 to start things off based off of how class went last time. So it says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear and slow to speak." So we had too much conversation maybe last time. We didn't get past the first two slides, but I'm just kidding with that. I really appreciate the participation and look forward to more of that today. So as a recap, this is kind of where we started and stopped last week. And I hope there was some good thoughts about this over the next couple days and beyond. And I'm hopeful that we all have a different perspective about that maybe than where we came in. But moving forward, you know, we certainly can come back to some of this, but I would like to cover some of the material today and move on. But as we go into this, does anybody want to start reading the first 3 verses of James 2 for us? We'll get going from there. Go for it. Just the first 3, please. That's good. Thank you, brother. All right, so just to recap, what was the instruction there? Just a real simple question to kind of get things going. What was the instruction there in the first verse? Stop playing favorites. That's a good way to put it. I mean, that's the right answer. Show no partiality. Don't show prejudice to folks. Okay. So then, what was the example that it was pointed out there, right? In this case. And I'm sorry for the repetitive nature of this, but go ahead. Okay. So well-clothed, well-dressed man was the example versus one in rags. And I think in today that I was thinking about this. That may be different. The well-dressed person may want to sit in the back. That's where a lot of people want to sit, I feel like, in congregation. And I know that's where we usually sit. So I'm throwing stones at myself here. But as Brother Moore said, it was showing partiality over someone rich versus someone poor. Moving forward here. You started to read verse 4, and I'm going to skip ahead. My slides are a little out of order here. This was a different version of that. So the version I have, and Brother Darrell read, was, Brother, what version did you have, Brother Darrell? Sounded like a King James or New King James. New King James, okay. So the NIV, and I'm going to read from the English Standard Version, and it says, "Have you not then made distinctions among yourself and become judges with evil thoughts?" Which is the same as the NIV there. The Living Bible puts it this way, and I kind of like that wording, you know, not trying to change the message that's being presented, but wrong motives, right? So what are our motives as we do things? Kind of going back to why and some of those things. Brother Glenn, yes, sir. So your opening comment was respecting of persons or judging people and Jesus do not mix, as not compatible. Well, I firmly believe that also. I just think I see that in my mind, I see that math equation with the equal sign, and there's a big strike through that equals mark, right? So, yes, sir, brother. That's right. Yeah. Well, and that's it. For selfish gain, to look at this as an opportunity, maybe, and you know, hey, if we buddy up with this guy, maybe he's going to let us ride his coattails a little bit. That's another good point. I think there was some of that going on. Yes, sir. And I would agree. So for some of those you could maybe not hear, maybe we relate more to people that are closer to our age, and we try to talk to them and give them preferential treatment over somebody that may not be. I know I certainly can see that. I can relate to that. And I think we all can in just human nature, right? I mean, you know, I love Brother Shaq, but I probably wouldn't be my first choice to go play football with or something on the weekend, you know. Maybe my third choice, but, you know, I love you, brother, but you know, golf, that's a different game, right? That's not a good example, but my point is we all gravitate towards those who are like us, right? And I think that's part of the human nature, and as Brother Glenn was saying, that's what Jesus came and turned the whole world upside down in that perspective, right? So, yes, sir. That's right.
I have a lot of things in my life that I need help. And God is the answer to that. But then I come into a place that shows me that. You think that's receptive to what God wants?
And so 2 points that Brother Glenn made. First was the recap of the story last week of the new preacher dressing like a homeless person, and then letting that be his example while preaching, or letting that be his sermon. And then the second was, how would that person respond who is maybe feeling judged and things like that. Why? So maybe asking a different question. Why do we do that? Why was it a problem in the first century here with the first letter written to the first group of dispersed Christians, and why does it continue to be a challenge for us today? Why do we assume, or why do we judge, so to speak, others instead of just trusting that God's got this, to borrow one of Shaq's favorite sayings? Anybody have any thought about that? Yes, sir.
One of the thoughts might be that the ways of God and the ways of looking at things are entirely upside down to the way we look at things, are taught to look at things, the way culture and views look at things. Way back in the very first probably book that was written, Job, when he was prosperous, then God was blessing him. So obviously when things bad happened to him, it straight off, must have done something wrong. He must have been sinning. He must have been. So it makes it simple for us to just say, God's blessing you if you're doing good, if you're wealthy, or if you're successful, or whatever. If God's not blessing you if you're poor, or if you're destitute, or whatever, bad things happen to you. And so, all the way throughout the Bible, there's undertones of us, our humans, and culture judging people based on their success or their failure. And whether it's you're self-made, or whether it's God's blessing you because you did something right, or God's punishing you because you did something wrong. And it's just never that simple. You've got to look beyond those superficial judgments, those quick judgments, those knee-jerk reactions of what's going on, and look at the person individually and get to know them and find out what's going on. I guess God knows our heart. What we show and what we are inside often is entirely different.
Well, and that's a good point. So you use Job as an example, and how even his friends were, questioning what he was doing to make God so upset. But the whole thing is turned upside down. One quick question, and then I'll go to Miss Kathy. Why? Okay, I agree with you, but then how do we do that? Right? So maybe that's another. I don't know if you have the answer to that, but go ahead, sister. Okay, so to figure that, to get that perspective, like Brother Chris was talking, we've got to get out of our comfort zone, get out of what feels easy for us, and get a little bit messy maybe along the way. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's an interesting perspective. So all animal kingdom participants or members have that preferential treatment for different things. And because we are the chosen ones from God and the first fruits and things like that, we have a soul. We should elevate our thinking and behavior to reflect that. So, yes, ma'am.
Josh, I think it's a lot of human nature, unfortunately, because when you stop and think about it, we're judging other people all day, every day. Little things, big things, forming our opinions about people that we don't know.
That's a scary truth, unfortunately. I agree with you. We're forming those opinions and judging all day. And that's where I used the example last week of holding the microphone up, and then we got a big old thing sticking out of our eye, right? And we're trying to pick out a little speck from someone else's. Yes, sir. Right. Right. Yep. Yep. And that's, Brother Glenn points out that in verse 4 that judges and evil thoughts are paired together, and obviously in a negative connotation. Just a quick question: is it possible to judge and have good thoughts? I don't know. What do you think? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Brother Darrell. That's a very good question. If we see a brother or sister going down a wrong path, do we approach them? Is that considered judging? Right. Does that give us the excuse not to say anything? Right. Right. So that's all right. That's a good point. So if we do help them get through that, we cover a multitude of sins, right? That's a very good point. A couple hands shot up when I asked that. 3 right here, actually. So let's go Ron, Chris, and Gary.
I sense that pride is fitting in here somewhere. And I remember one time in a discussion about hiring this particular preacher that I thought was excellent, named Torrey. I was told later that that's not the image that we want to portray. And it bothered me a lot because what image do we want to portray? Truth versus appearance necessarily. I think we've got to be careful in a lot of these areas because pride, as we know, is the one that always steals our faith.
So in all of this, let's not let pride get in the mix too, right? I 100% agree. Yes, sir.
Just a quick thing, there was a point of judging. I'm not a Greek scholar, so I don't know if there's different Greek terms for judging, but I know that we're told not to judge and told to judge in different places, and I don't think that's inconsistent, but I think that what the world considers to be judging by condemning someone or just slap them off is wrong. But I think if you see them going the wrong way, we're clearly told to go help them, and if that's
That's a good point. Gary, real quick, and then we'll go back out. Sure.
But they have a deeper faith because of, you know, their background and
Yep.
what God has done for them. So there's, you know, you have to realize that everybody has different talents and different backgrounds and
Yep.
can add to this church one way or the other.
That's a very good point. Everyone's got different talents. We're all parts of the body. I thought I saw something a couple weeks ago that reminded me of that, and it was framed in a different way, but it makes the point. It was a elephant, a goldfish in a bowl, an alligator, and a monkey, and there's a tree. And it says if we measure everybody on the ability to climb the tree, we're going to have 3 failures and 1 success. And so it was that same kind of comment that sticks in my mind. I'm pretty simple, as you can tell. I like to use simple analogies, so that's why that sticks out. Yes, brother.
We are told if we got a problem with brother, go to that brother.
Right.
And goes to the extent of that you got to discipline that brother, which we don't ever do anymore. It tells us the steps to do this. So are we judging them?
Yeah.
If you're bringing a fault of a brother or sister, bring them back to Christ, there's a process that we go through to do this. And so you are forming some kind of judgment there. And the whole congregation of the eldership has to come to bear if you're going to this fellowship. I've been there too.
Yes, sir. Yep.
We used to do that. We don't do that anymore. If someone just leaves or someone does something and they don't ever come back, we just take them off the road, no problem. But see, we're not doing our job when that happens. It should be common knowledge, it should be brought before the congregation. That this particular person is not in fellowship anymore because of bang, 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 bang. We don't do that anymore.
Well, I don't disagree with your point. I think that is maybe a deeper conversation we need to have with some of the leadership. I don't want to address that today. So,
Well, I don't need for you to address it, I'm just telling you.
Yep.
Just like the brother was saying, okay?
yep,
There is a form,
absolutely.
and it's a legitimate form in the scripture that we discipline.
Well, and then good point. And then the other side of Brother Darrell's point was, if we don't help that person or don't try to help that person, like what you're suggesting, then are we then guilty? And as Brother Kent said, I don't see the Bible showing us a bunch of examples of everybody just staying in their lane either. You know, we've got to help each other all get on the journey and get to the right place. A few more hands, and then we'll try to move on here. Yes, sir.
Seems like we're having a kind of discussion of what to judge.
Yep.
I just did a quick Google search. It says forming an equal conclusion.
Okay, good point.
So I don't think if you see someone go down the wrong path, if you want to help them,
Yep.
I don't think you might form an opinion, but not necessarily a conclusion about it. So, I mean,
I
the whole thing is you go to them and you talk to them and see if you can help out, and see if you can find out what's going on, and then show them why you feel they might be going down the wrong path.
mm-hmm.
You know, scripturally, but not with a condemning attitude or way about it.
That's a good point. So the definition of, go ahead. So judging, the definition would be to form a conclusion about that person. Quick story, we've got a situation at work right now where it looks like we've got an employee stealing from us. And the trap has been set. I'm waiting for him to walk into it because I cannot prove until it happens. So I'm still talking to him, still working with him, still trying to help him. And even once he does walk into the trap, we're going to go, okay, man, what's going on? Why did this happen? You know, hopefully it was a short-sighted mistake that we all have made, and and can move on from. But if it's not, hey, it's time to go a different way. But we can't make that decision until we know for a fact, and I think that's part of working with them. You had your hand up, sir. The motivation was wrong from the beginning. We looked at it for worldly reasoning. And you see there in verse 5 and 6 and 7, good point. Thank you for the segue opportunity here. So, God, and looking at this as we've just talked about earlier, has not God chosen the poor to be rich in faith and heirs of his kingdom? And then 6 and 7, have not the rich oppressed and blasphemed you? And this is, in my opinion, kind of the human appeal of why we should not do this to the folks that this was written to. Does anybody have any thoughts about James? And maybe this is where I was wanting to go with that was, and some of you are much better, most of you are much better scholars, Bible scholars than I am, but when I read this, or anytime I read the Bible, I always have this aura about it that it's the holy, inspired in Scripture, and of course it is, but it's almost not written to just normal people, right? And maybe I'm not be explaining that right, but I always feel like it's written to a elevated status of Christian, and I'm just trying to get a crumb of that, right? And here in verse 6 and 7, he's saying, no, these are the same guys that are trying to beat you up and throw you in jail. Don't you know? Why are you giving them elevated status? Does anybody else feel that way about that, or am I crazy? I know I'm crazy. Beth, don't answer that, but anybody else have any thoughts about that? Yes, sir. You mentioned pride earlier, right? And that's a similar concept, that if we're wealthy and we're blessed, and that's because of me, that is, I can see that being a real challenge too. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Right. Yep. Yep. There you go.
And so now you're immediately saying you're violating that royal law by this judgment. We're not judging, we've gotten to this part of judging, but this is what it's in respect of a person by what you perceive to be right.
Very good points. Very good points. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep.
James' brother, verse 16 ends this passage talking about some of these people. It says, in their mouth speaking, great dwelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of their vanity. In other words, there's some advantage to being Jude says, these people who are that way, they do it out of self. They do it out of advantage for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they wrongly have respect for
Yes, sir. And then we're going to move on.
Throughout the New Testament, where we were giving examples of people who are in the church and trying to take it away from where it's supposed to be. In 7 it says that not only in 6 and 5 it say blaspheming you, but it also says blaspheming Jesus, blaspheming the 7 says blaspheming the whole name of him who you're hearing. So, you know, it's the Sadducees and Pharisees were constantly trying to trick Jesus and trying to discredit him. It seems that in the New Testament church early on, one of the ways, not just killing him, but another way to try to destroy the church was for prominent people to come into the church. But if you look at who these people are, you know, it tells do not deceive your brother. And yet these people were taking and dragging him to court. These people were actually blaspheming Jesus, and yet apparently were getting in front seats in church because they were prominent in the
Yep.
community.
Yep.
So, you know, again, it sounds like they're going to have a specific real issue here, not just rich poor, but we got wolves in sheep's clothing coming into the church to destroy the church from within. And you can look at judge them by what they already said.
For sure. Right.
So that is another case again where the question is whether we should not judge people's motives sometimes. James is telling us right there, look at these guys.
That's right. Well, and then again, I think to put a kind of a bow on that point, yeah, maybe judge their motives, but not form a complete conclusion until you know that person and know what's going on with that whole situation. So moving on here to read some of these next couple verses, because I don't want to stay on these next week also. So we're going to move through this. So verse 8, if you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you're doing well. But if you show partiality, you're committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become accountable for all of it. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. If you commit adultery but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. All right, so I'm going to stop right there for a moment. Okay, is that pretty straightforward? Any questions or comments about that?
all that's saying is there's really no big sin or small sin.
Right.
That's right.
Transgression, no matter how small it might be, is still sin.
No big sin and a small sin. They're all sin. Yep. Yep. That's a good point. Sure. Right. Well, based off of their, even 15 or so years, maybe 20 some years for some of these folks of being believers of the way now and Christians, but their whole life previous to that, they would give honor and glory to some of those higher up Jewish religious folks. Do we do that? Sidebar. Catholicism sticks out in my mind, not to throw stones at that, but I feel like, do we still do that? Or are there some, maybe, I don't know, I'm asking, are there previously Catholic converted Christians that maybe still have that to overcome? I know of some friends of mine that have done that have had that to overcome, so. Please don't. Please do not think of that as higher. I go back to football, and a few months ago, Brother Wilson, David Wilson, gave this, he was a coach, for those of you who don't know, he gave the talk about why football is the greatest game, and because there are men or people who play that their whole job is to do something away from the ball to make sure the other can succeed, and that's why that team all ties together, and that's how it is in any organization or group that has to have successes. There's certainly the ones in the front holding the banner doing those things, but as important or more important are those on the background doing things that keep it all going. You know, and again, for the sake of football, it's the offensive line that get no glory, which I was an offensive lineman, by the way. But, you know, they are the ones that if you don't have a good offensive line, your quarterback doesn't have time to throw the ball. So you'll never be able to move the ball forward and score if you don't have that background position taking care of things. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep. That's right. Yep. Peter was reprimanded by Paul, is what he said. So, yes, sister. Good. Don't judge, but you do use good judgment. That sounds like motherly advice almost, if I could say so myself. So let's close out the last two verses here and talk about these for just a moment, and then class will be done today. So verse 12 says, "So speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty," which we'll come back to that. For judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy, and mercy triumphs over judgment. So as I mentioned before, I'm a kind of a simpleton. Law of liberty. Anybody have any thoughts about that? That's an odd phrasing to just throw in there. Right? Yes, sir. Well, and I would. Okay. So yes, Brother Gary. That's a good way to put it. Yes,
Jack.
Yes, Brother Jay.
Maybe next week, I'd like for you to really go into depth of verse 10.
Okay. Well, we can't go backwards, so let's do it now. Verse 10. Let's see. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become accountable for all of it. So that's where we were talking. We were summarizing that if there's no big sin or little sin. It's they're all the same. That's Plain and simple, that's the way I view it. I'm not sure what you're looking for.
It says, whoever keeps the whole law, and some that is one point, is guilty of breaking all.
Right,
We know that we say by grace only.
right.
Ain't none of us gonna make it to heaven.
That's right,
The law was sin.
right.
So if we broke one, broke them all. It's just, average Joe does that. Okay? Now what separates him from us?
If he's not a Christian, then that would be the only thing, is Christ. Right.
So it's just glossing over it is,
That's good. Okay, and that's a fair point. I should have explained that a little longer.
just go into depth a little bit more on some of the verses that really mean something
Yes, sir.
to us.
Yes, sir.
Should mean something to us.
Yes, sir.
We gloss
No, that's a fair point.
The
And I
thing-
have,
and we'll go into it. I'll pick up on that. But
okay,
I think the bottom line that we got to come to grips with, Brother Jack, is that we can't pick and choose. This is a bucket, and there's guidance in there. And if we try and pick and choose, then we are missing out on the glory. And the other thing is that in that bottom line, we got to be sure we're not messing around with public opinion. This is our stand, this is our belief and our walk, and the mercy that we see in God, we have to display that mercy. And my notes say, kind mercy wins over harsh judgment every time.
Some people will take this, okay? You can't be in the military. You gotta be a conscientious objector. Okay? You can't be a policeman. Because, what it says, love your neighbor as yourself, okay? I've been in this position.
I realize that,
I've been in this position.
right?
I took my weapon 3 times.
Yes, sir.
And it was the time that 7 people were supposed to be in dead. Because of the deputy I was with, he and the other guy.
Right.
So I'm just saying that it's not as easy. You gotta go into it a little bit. If we don't have policemen, we're in trouble.
Right,
If we don't have military, we're in trouble.
right.
Okay, so you got to think about it. Do we have anybody in the congregation? I know we have one policeman in here. And he's a temporary, okay?
Got it. I appreciate.
There's going to be occasions that he can let the person's soul.
Yep.
But when somebody's coming at him, and he's a detective, he's going to protect himself, he's going to do what the law says,
Yep.
or he's going to be dead.
Yep. And those are discernments. Those are discernments that we are challenged to make. And let's continue. We're out of time now, but I appreciate your comment.
yep, yep. Time is up. Thank you all very much for the comments today. Have a good week, good worship service this morning, and we'll pick up next week.
Protecting you from
Parachute.